Welcome back to the Wingspan podcast, episode 51. I'm Doug Barak, joined by my co-host Chris Mahala, Nets Daily, and our special guest. He's a True Hooper contributor and co-host of the 7 Footers podcast and NBA Picks and Props.
We welcome Jarod Hector to the podcast. Thank you for taking some time
guys?
to take some time out of your day to join Doug and I. What's up, man? How you doing?
I appreciate it, man. Always good to get on a podcast, talk hoops. I appreciate you guys' work. As I said before we started rolling, Chris, obviously, I always be seeing you at like Nets games and stuff. Like, you know, I love this stuff, man. I mean, we get to do a really cool thing for work that most people don't wake up every day say they get to do cool stuff, you know. So I'm very appreciative of what we get to do.
We're glad to have you on, and we're so glad that there isn't a mic that you don't like talking to. So thank you, as you said off air, for joining us. I just had to bring that up. So can you talk about your journey to where you are today, what college you go to, first relevant position internship, and when did you want to work in sports? I know you work alongside with other things in your life, so feel free to bring that up as well.
Yeah. So, you know, my journey into this industry is different, right? It's not traditional. I didn't do the whole broadcast journalism route, blah, blah, whatever. I mean, I went to Rutgers University. Shout out to Scarlet Knights. You know, I worked in finance. I worked in public relations. I worked in a million other jobs and fields. I worked in nonprofit and NGO development, right? So I've had a varied career that had nothing to do with sports. But like most people who work in these various industries, what do I spend the majority of my time when I'm not working, thinking and talking and doing with sports, right? And it's something that, you know, you could call it a passion, call it a calling, but it's something that I've always like, you know, my first memory of sport was the Mets in 1985 and the 85 NBA finals, right? I mean, right? So I'm giving away my age here. I'm an old man, but like these are the things that like I remember as a young kid coming up. And it's always fascinated me, right? Like just the greatness of these athletes and what they're able to do and how they're able to perform. And so it's always been something I've been interested in. And, you know, but you go through life and you do different things, right? You go to college, you're like, all right, I'm gonna make this money. I'm gonna go out here and do this thing. And you're living a certain kind of life. And it's fine, and it was for what it was. But then life changes happen to you, right? And you reassess and you prioritize. That's a big thing coming out of COVID for everybody, right? Like people realizing what's important, right? So for me, it was a point where, you know, I was married at the time, you know, owned the house in the burbs. It's like, all right, guess it's time to have kids now and do this thing and whatever. And then it was kind of like, wait, is that really what I want to be doing? And there were so many other things going on at the time as well with work and sort of being unsatisfied in a career. And ultimately, I ended up going through a divorce. And one of the things that happens with a divorce is you really get a chance to reset and really think about things. And fortunately for us, like we didn't have any kids and it wasn't acrimonious or contentious, right? But it still allowed me to reset and be like, what am I doing? And when I look back on my life when I'm 70 or whatever, I'm gonna be like, damn, I wish I did X, Y, Z. And my ex-wife always during the time was like, you love sports. Why don't you start a blog? Why don't you do? And she was always encouraging me to do it. And I never did. But you know, I took that advice, you know, once we were going through that, and I was like, this is my opportunity. How many people get the chance to reset their life when they're at that stage, right? Late 30s, early 40s, they can do that. And I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to, you know, and you start working for free for various, you know, online outlets, and you start getting media passes, and you go to, and then you just realize, oh, I can do this. Like this is what I love doing. And then opportunities start coming, right? You start showing your work with what you can produce and what happens. And you know, and that's really kind of how it all started, right? So I was doing literally something completely different, love sports. Some of my online work got picked up by BET Digital. And once BET saw me, that gave me a bigger platform. And I connected with various folks, right? With Dexter and Brian. I connected with Henry Abbott, who runs TrueHoop, right? And different things like that. And that then was able to give me more of a platform. And now I'm visible and seen to a certain extent. And there are more opportunities, right? I've written pieces for The Undefeated. Like that's sort of, it's that journey, right? Like you just take a chance, you start, and you see what happens.
What would you say has been your most impactful project thus far?
Oh man, you know, I've done so many cool things, man. I think for me, honestly, one of the most impactful things I've ever done and worked on, was covering something not sports. So when I first started, I worked for I was doing work on a website called Black Sports Online, and they do a lot of different things besides just sports, right? There's entertainment, whatever. I got to cover the Tribeca Film Festival. I got to do Music Fest, like doing all different kinds of media, right? I think was very helpful to me to understanding. Look, at the end of the day, what are you doing? You're telling a story, right? Or you're giving insider access into something that people who like the thing, whether it's music or film or sport, something that they wouldn't have seen anywhere else. Like, oh, that's pretty cool, right? I didn't know that about Jay-Z, or I didn't know that about whoever, Kevin Durant, right? Like, these are the things that's why you tune into it. Yeah, we can all see the games, right? But game recaps, like, I know what happens. I don't need to read that. What's the thing that happened that I didn't know about, or even the thing within the game that I saw, or the performance that I saw that I didn't know about? So getting that opportunity to do other things besides sports, I thought was really transformational in helping me sort of understand what it is we're doing here, right? Which is telling stories, giving insight, and wowing people with, oh, here's something new.
Mm-hmm. And then when you were talking about your journey and how you got into the sports field, I guess you could say with a fairly different route, right? You didn't go to the journalism route, you didn't go to the broadcasting route, you didn't take that typical educational route, right?
Nope.
And a lot of our listeners, I can imagine, you get a lot of messages as well from a lot of guys that are trying to find a way into it, right? I get those all the time. I can imagine you get those as well. What kind of advice would you give to those guys? Obviously, you have to find a niche. Everyone knows that that's kind of like the main formula to the whole thing, but right? But what's kind of that broad advice you would give to those people that are listening that are like, okay, I want to get into this field of sports journalism?
So the first thing is, what are you passionate about within sports journalism, right? Like, that's the broad field. Like, okay, here are my passions. What also, when you went whatever your academic route is, even if you go to journalism school and all that, and personally, I would not even recommend doing that. I would recommend taking a much broader liberal arts undergraduate degree because it gives you a framework and a way to think about the world differently. One of my unofficial mentors is Bomani Jones, right? And what's so great about Bo's an economics guy, right? Like, got an economics degrees, was in an economics PhD program. So he thinks about things through a different lens than a traditional journalist and sports writer, right? Like, we can all turn on TV and watch sports and have an opinion about what we saw and then go ask some person who knows some questions about the thing. But how does my frame of thinking impact the story I'm going to tell you about this thing that I saw, right? Or what is it that I saw in a game that I thought was interesting? Last night, I'm not sure when this is going to come out, but last night was game 3 of the Western Conference Finals, right? And I saw something interesting. So the Ivica Zubac on the Clippers was still playing drop coverage, but he was playing up a little bit forward on the drop coverage, right? And I was like, man, it seems like he's able to get back to the rim and still contest, but he wasn't able to do that in game 1. And that's not about where he was position-wise, because in game 1, he was closer to the rim. Like, what happened? And I was talking to somebody, and they were like, well, look at how he's standing. He's got his butt down and his hand is up, right? So now he's able to turn and get back to the rim much faster than if he's in a full erect mode, right? Much harder for him to turn that big body and compress it and race back. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting, right? So what are the things that you see when you watch a game that's like, oh, this is interesting, or whatever it may be, right? And then use your frame of thinking and the way you look at the world to then say, okay, why is this important and why should I care, right? When you're telling that story. And again, like, how can you marry things, right? Like, sports and pop culture go hand in hand, right? Like, how can you connect those two? How can you connect sport and music, like, and whatever it may be, sport and actors? Like, one of my favorite things is like recasting like a movie and being like, would this work if so and so from the NBA was the lead actor, right? Like, I do that with The Wire in my head all the time. Like, who are the Wire characters that are in the NBA, right? Like, whatever it may be. And I think that those are the kind of things I think that would help people. But it's got to come first from, it's what I would be doing anyway, right? Even if I wasn't getting paid. And so if that's where you start, I think you're in a good spot.
Then another question you probably get as well is like the lack of expressing your own opinions, right? Because everyone always doesn't want to be called wrong or doesn't want to be called that. What kind of advice would you give to those guys that are looking and like, oh, I have a good idea, but I don't know how well it's going to translate to the public?
Try it. You're not going to know unless it happens. You know where the worst idea is? The ones that are stuck in your head that never go out. Like, who gives a shit? Like, you're going to be wrong. You're going to get picks wrong. You're going to get it doesn't matter. And yes, they're going to keep on the internet who are there just to troll you and dunk on you when you say something wrong. That's fine. Let them do that. Because you're doing. That's my thing, right? Like you're doing and you're creating. The majority of people on the internet who troll and come after you, what are they're not doing, right? They wish they were doing, and but that's why they act the way they do. I always operate from the position of when someone is hating or coming at or attacking, after I get past the initial like reflexes are up and I want to like fight through the keyboard, okay, pause. What's going on in your life that you're so angry about a game? Right? Like, so, and that's how I always think about it. Okay, your shit must be going really bad for you, sir or ma'am. And I'm sorry it's bad. Like, I feel bad for you, right? That's how I look at it because whenever that happens, that's what the situation always is. It's saying more about them than it is about you.
Well said, well said. And then you brought up a little earlier with Bomani Jones as mentors. Mentors is a huge thing in the field of journalism, no matter what sports, what you name a field of journalism, it's very important. So who have been some of your mentors? And when you look back on all those mentors' experience, obviously I can imagine you talk to them every single day, like everyone else that has mentors. What's like that best piece of advice that really sticks out, or something that you put on like a chalkboard or something that you look at every day?
You put on your affirmation notes that you put on your vision board and like, which by the way, I believe in all that stuff, right? Like if your mind can achieve it, and it sounds corny, if your mind can conceive it, you actually can achieve it. Now, you have to do the work behind it. You can't just be like, all right, I'm going to do X, Y, and then just sit around and wait for it to happen. Well, now I have to do the actual work. But if you can see it there, you know it can happen. So that's a piece of advice that I've always gotten forever and I always give out. The other thing is be authentically who you are and don't be afraid of being who you are. I think one of the advantages to being as old as I am now is I don't really care what people think about me or because I'm comfortable in my own skin. But it took a long time to get here, right? And it took a lot of people a long time to get comfortable in their own skin, for whatever the reasons may be. I'm a big advocate of therapy. People, if you need it, seek it. Like there's no shame in it. Like you need people to talk to who are objective, who have no personal connection to you, who can be like, okay, you're on that bullshit. Or who can be like, no, like this is a fair response to have. Here's how you can channel that and do XYZ to make things better. So I think, knowing yourself and understanding who you are and being comfortable in that and not being afraid to voice that is the number one thing. And it always needs to start, guys, from a place of passion and love. Like if you're not feeling that, the audience knows. They can smell bullshit right away. Like that's why things don't stick, is when they know, man, this guy's full of shit or this girl's full of shit. Like, but if you know, like this is the thing, okay, this guy feels this or this girl feels this.
Very well said.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I think this is a really strong era of mental health and awareness that hopefully continues the trend where people don't feel like they can't show who they truly are in every aspect because, it's like their kryptonite otherwise. And, we want to be as strong as Superman at the end of the day, one way or another.
I got a whole thing about that and like hero narratives, right? Like it's a thing that we do all the time in society, right? Like if you think about everything that we know, whether it's popular culture, how America was built, whatever, what do we always champion? The rugged individual, right? And it's like, like nobody does shit alone. Like you need help. Like it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, Henry Ford, Andrew Carnegie, yes, I get it. Those dudes got mad help. Okay? Like you don't do things alone. We'd like to champion that, but there's so many factors and so many people whose stories don't get told because it's much easier for us to tell Metropolis is under siege. Superman comes out of nowhere and saves the day. Meanwhile, you're discounting what Jimmy Olsen did, what Lois Lane did, right? What the police did,
and Martha Kent.
Right, exactly. You're dismissing all the things that these other people did because it's a much easier story to say Superman defeated the galactic bad guys and saved the day. That's digestible, but there's so much more than just that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Tony Stark without Pepper Potts. Like, everyone has that really strong force behind them, whether or not they're in the suit or not. And obviously, she eventually donned the suit, and look how powerful she was. So,
see, look, you didn't know we're gonna break out in the comic books today, did you?
I'm down with it. Especially after seeing Loki and all these Disney Plus series. Like, it's amazing and how powerful.
It, huh?
I'm loving it, but I'm sure we'll find a way to tinker and switch back our disguises into the comic book world as we talk into sports. But let's go back into our court and bring it back to when did you start watching the league and who's your favorite team growing up? And
85 NBA Finals was my first memory of basketball, Lakers Celtics. I hated the Celtics. I was Team Magic. Like, Magic was my guy. And, the funny thing about kids is I think kids are front runners when it comes to sports, when you really think about it, right? Like, kids like the teams who win. Like, that's what you like. And there was the way that Magic played that I just loved that, man. Like, dude was always smiling, like the no-look passes, I was like, this is fun. Who doesn't like doing this? And it helped that the Lakers were always winning, right? That was a nice thing to have. So yeah, growing up, I was a huge Laker and Magic fan. Magic, Kareem, Worthy, Byron Scott, Michael Cooper, like Vlade, Kurt Rambis, like those are my dudes, man. Like I was a Lakers guy through and through growing up. When Magic announced that he was HIV positive, I was in seventh grade. Like, and then that's 1990, and our knowledge about HIV and AIDS back then to where it is now is night and day. Like, I came home, like my mom had like come home early from work that day. I turned the TV on. I even started crying, and I was like, I thought he was gonna die. Like, I literally thought he was gonna die like tomorrow, like the next day. I was like, oh, this is terrible. But yeah, 85 NBA finals. And then, over time, I just became more and more a fan of the league. Um, Once I got like into my, I would say college years, I stopped rooting for teams and I just looked at like players and stories that I liked. And I was kind of early wave on that, right? Where like you just like players. And I was like, I just like watching really good players play basketball. So yeah, so of course I thought Jordan was incredible and, dunking on the Spurs and, all the dynastic teams. I was always fascinated by the dynastic teams. Greatness to me is something I'm so fascinated by. Like you guys know, the NBA is 450 players, give or take. I'm like, yo, how fucking good do you have to be at basketball to make this league? Like, damn. Like, and so I watch a guy like Kevin Durant, and I'm like, bro, like you are so good at basketball. Like, and it's just amazing to me, like the amount of course you have to have some talent, but like the thing that most casual fan doesn't see and we don't talk about enough in media is the work it takes to get to be that good. The hours upon hours upon hours of work. And it's incredible. I love it.
yeah, no, definitely. I mean, what one fan's casual scrub is, they can
Right.
still whoop the floor with them any day.
Oh, that's my favorite thing, right? I'm sure you guys saw the Brian Scalabrine video, right? Like Scal hadn't played basketball in, I don't know, in the NBA in like 15 years at that point. Got a bit of a gut, like, and this is a 20-something-year-old kid who's like, nah, I can definitely beat you. Scal's like, cool, your ball first. Dude didn't score a point the entire time. Like, and like, right, and like Brian Scalabrine would be considered like a scrub, right? The worst player in the NBA will destroy you in basketball, like destroy you.
Yeah, 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 for sure. And that kind of brings up another question, like with generational talent, how we always have the GOAT conversation. I see it more as a GOAT of each generation,
Mhm.
not just of overall. I mean, I forgot who said it, that LeBron's the best athlete over time and Jordan's the best player kind of thing.
Mhm.
But also like the rules are different, the
Yeah.
game's different, and so many different things. So what are your thoughts on kind of how all these different legacy, because everyone's going to have an amazing legacy of these great caliber players, but how do you see these talks and this kind of thing? Because objectively, I know you're a very objective person as I've seen you talk with Dexter Henry. So
Yeah, it's tough, right? So we're arguing several things at once, right? And that's the thing that gets conflated with time. Are we arguing who's had a better career or who is strictly the best basketball player they've ever seen, right? Because they're two different things. When people start saying someone's was better at basketball and they start listing me their accomplishment, all NBA, I'm like, no, 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 no. You're listing me their resume. That person has a better career, no doubt. I'm not knocking that. Strictly like in terms of if we were at the park and we're just choosing sides, right? How are you choosing the players here? And I think to your point about generations, Doug, like we have to stop comparing eras because it's too hard now, right? Like the game is so different. Forget about in the 1970s. The game is so different early 2000s than it is 2021, right? So we have to look at this differently. So that's how I talk about it. Because I look at someone like Kareem, right? Kareem's on my GOAT Mount Rushmore, right? There's only three guys who I list now who I think can be considered the greatest of all time. And it's LeBron, Michael, and Kareem. Those are the three guys. Now, here's the thing about that. It's two sides. One, they have the three greatest resumes of anybody, right? Like just look at everything. Kareem, most MVPs of anybody ever, 6, right? And you go on the 18 All NBA, like all the ridiculous numbers, right? Same with LeBron, same with Michael. Like those Those resumes, nobody's coming close to those resumes. But then I go back to how they played relative to their era, right? Like, well, there's a reason why they won 5 MVPs because they were the best players about every single time, right? Like, and so it's challenging. But then when you try to encompass it all together, just strictly playing, I don't know how you can have more players from previous eras than you will have players of the current era, just because of modern science and ability. I mean, look at this. Jaren Jackson Jr. is a better athlete than anybody who played basketball in the 1970s, right? Like, he just is. Now, I'm not saying he's a better basketball player or has a better career than any of those guys, but just strictly athletic ability. He's a freak show, right? Athletes didn't exist in masses like that back then, 60s, 50s. Like, no, that wasn't a thing. So I think we have to look at, all right, generationally, here's where we are, and then are we talking career accomplishment, or are we talking about strictly straight up, I'm going to a park and I'm picking dudes? And I said this the other day to Dexter. Since I started watching basketball in '85, my first memory sentiently of basketball, I'd be hard pressed to find 5 basketball players, talent-wise, that if I'm choosing sides on the playground, that I would pick above Kevin Durant. It just, it'd be hard for me to find 5 guys. Like,
I think a big part of that too, especially with the GOAT conversation, is that everyone's very generational bias, right? Because everyone likes to have a sense of pride, saying, "Hey, I got to watch LeBron, such as me in my era," and then maybe in your era, it's that Michael Jordan, and then you move back one, it's Kareem, and then it goes up, and then in 10 years, it's going to be the same person, whoever that next player is, whether it's Doncic or someone in the league, or it's someone that's still in high school or in college, so that it's one of those things. I'm on that same page of, listen, you appreciate greatness rather than compare the two.
Yes.
So I wanted to get your point on this while we're still on this era, right? So it's, I guess, the popular example today, especially with the young talent, is the Trae Young Doncic, right? It's that, okay, they have the history of the trading, right? And they have, okay, Mavs traded for they did that whole deal, right? So what do you think that people should have that type of mindset of saying, okay, let me compare 2 guys that came in the league together and kind of have that argument when they're still in the league together? Or are you on that side of respect them in their kind of greatness respectfully?
Chris, comparison is a thief of joy, my friend, right?
Yeah.
Like, when you are constantly comparing, you are missing out on what you're seeing in front of you. Now, we're human beings. That's just how our brains work, right? Because as smart as we all think we are, our brains are actually very simple, and that's what we compare because we need things to be simple in our heads, right? We need categories. We have to box everything up. Ooh, that's a chair. That's a table. That's this, that's that. Because that's how we talk and speak. So we need things to be fit into neat boxes. We don't like ambiguity. As much as we say, no, we need clarity. This one's the best, this one's the worst. Look, man, greatness is everywhere. And when it comes to Trae and Luka, it's so funny. I was talking to Coach Thorpe about this. Try to tell someone in Atlanta that they picked the wrong person between Luka and Trae. Go ahead, try to tell them. They'll be like, yeah, you can have Luka. We'll keep Trae. And honestly, besides the fact that Luka's 7 inches taller, can you definitively say he's a better basketball player than Trae Young?
Oh,
right? Like you
It's
can't
too
say
tough.
that.
The rosters are so different. Everything, the
He
makeup,
may be,
the
right? Like
conferences.
different conferences. I'm not saying that Luka couldn't lead the Hawks to the conference finals. I don't know. He plays in the West with the Mavericks. Trae plays in the East with the Hawks. It is what it is. I just think that we need to appreciate each guy for what they are and not worry so much about the constant comparison. Like it ruins it. And look, they're going to do it because of the drafting and all that. But look, Trae's incredible, man. Like, and what I love about Trae is the fearlessness and the way he inspires his team. He's so confident that, like, when those guys are playing with him, they believe you're going to cut and screen harder. You're going to guard your man harder because you believe, we're down 12 with 4 minutes. He might score 9 in a row. Now we might win this. Like, and there's something, I'm a big analytics and numbers guy. I'm not a slave to them, right? I use them for what they need. Like, if my eyes see something that I think is true, I go, before I make a grand declaration, let me see the numbers support what my eyes tell me. Oh, they do. Or if they don't, I'm like, then what the hell am I watching? And then I go back and I ask smarter people, Coach, what do you see here? Am I wrong? No, you're not wrong. It's scheme, it's this, it's that, it's whatever, right? Because I like to be nuanced when I talk about things and not just be like, I'm not a hot take guy. That's just like, I get it. That works. That's entertainment. But that is just such a terrible way to have discourse around this stuff.
Now, I want to ask you this question because I feel this is something that I'm very kind of against, right? When you see the NBA draft coming up with all these prospects,
Mm-hmm.
and especially it hovers more around the top 5 or 10 players. Are you a fan of analysts or sites comparing, say, for example, Evan Mobley to Kevin Garnett? Or
Mm-hmm.
having those kind of setting those high expectations early before they even play a minute of NBA basketball? Are you one of those fans?
No. So there's something interesting called the anchoring effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically when our first reception of something is how we always have it in our minds. So then when the actual product comes out, right, and it's not what that first position is, that dictates how we talk about it going forward. The easiest way to think about it is preseason college basketball polls, for instance, right? Okay. Every year, some team gets ranked inevitably higher than they should be for whatever reason. Let's say they're ranked third. But the team actually performs where they're supposed to perform, which is around 10 or 11. What's the conversation around them? This team underachieved all year. And it's like, no, they didn't. They were improperly ranked to start. This is actually who they are. And they're actually playing perfectly fine. It's the same thing with this, right? I hate using comparison, but again, as I said before, that's what we do. We need a reference point. Well, Evan Mobley, but he has to be like somebody. Who is it? Oh, it's Kevin Garnett. It's like, chill. Like, that may be one of the greatest defensive players of all time, for sure, of his generation. Like, let's not put all this on this kid. Let's just say, here's what he's really good at. Here's what he needs some work at. Here's where I think he can, and with that, as we know with the NBA, so much of that is about fit and where he gets drafted, right? Because let's be honest, the majority of NBA teams are shitty at player development. They just are. Yeah. They're not good. And so you get drafted to the wrong place, the likelihood of you reaching your actual potential, probably not going to happen. Because again, your LeBrons, your Kevin Durant's, those dudes are going to be great no matter where they go. But those are generational dudes. You don't get those, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys in the draft. It's all about fit.
Totally agree.
No, definitely. And you were talking about not being the hot take guy. So how do you think the NBA should handle all these hot take shows? Because something I was thinking about, like when I watch our friend Nets Daily, Matt Brooks, do his video things, like I learn about the game more, find it so much more fascinating and interesting than all these like narrative storyline BS that's being forced down our throat all the time, whether it's Scottie Pippen, Kendrick Perkins, Stephen A. Smith, Skip Bayless, all these talking heads, Shannon Sharp, who's like, it's not even his sport yet. He's talking about basketball all the time. Like, how can we make basketball entertaining? Like for any sport that matter, I feel like the NFL does a better job of this, where they do a better job of analyzing the video while still making it entertaining, where they can still weave in those potential narratives, but also staying with like showing this, showing that. And you're learning what pin downs are, drop coverage, all this. Like, how, Doug, in your opinion?
You're in my wheelhouse, Doug. Look, first of all, football, just in the way that sport is played, allows for more nuance during a live coverage, right? Because there's a stoppage every 10 seconds. So while we got to wait for everybody to get their big selves back up to the line and restart or whatever, I've got 45 seconds of dead time that Tony Romo can explain to me what the quarterback was seeing. Basketball doesn't have that, right? It's constant motion all the time. It doesn't stop. That's the one problem in an in-game live broadcast. So what do? Our broadcasters do quick, snappy things that fit into what people want to hear, which is the reason why they won is because of the hero. That is what sells, and that's what works, right? The other thing the NBA has to be mindful of is the social media component of this, right? And the NBA as a league doubled down early on social media, which was good, right? And they made their rights available. Anybody can pull up highlights and do whatever, where the NFL didn't do that. But they are mistaking the value of social media for what that can actually do to promote and grow the game, right? Because really, when we're talking about Twitter, who are the people on Twitter really talking about basketball, right? It's people who are watching the NBA any damn way, right? And the NBA cares about casual fans. Every league cares about the casual fan, not us, people who cover the league or who be diehards. They already got us. They know we're watching regardless. How do I get the person who has 9,000 other options on a Tuesday night to sit down and watch Hawks versus Magic, right? Okay. I gotta sell it now. How do I sell it? Okay, here's this hero. Because the NBA is a TV show, right? And we need heroes, we need villains, we need storylines. This is what the league does. So the league loves these talk shows because they need that. That's what keeps the casual fan interested, is the drama. We don't care about that. We're like, who cares? Whatever. But that's how you keep the casual fan interested, is that drama piece of it, and all the oh, Scottie Pippen said Kevin Durant's a bum, or whatever this talking head said today. That's not just sport though. That's politics. That's right. You put two people on a panel, they're yelling at each other about and who can be louder. That's what a certain segment of the country likes in the way they consume media.
Yeah, no, definitely. Someone mentioned recently that the reason why certain things happen in politics more recently, a couple years back, was because it was a wrestling fan mindset where the
Yes.
heroes, the villains, it's
Yes.
all show. And
You
I'm
need to
just like,
heal for sure, man.
yeah, and I think the NBA, I love Inside the NBA. I think it's one of the best, and I think sometimes they can be very objective while providing entertainment. I think that's what they need to find a balance. Is not just talking head points like Nick Wright, who just likes, to burn the feed of everyone just to get like some clickbait narrative crap. Just like, dude, stop being Nick wrong and just like be objective.
But
Like
think
Nina
about it
came
though,
from
right?
football to become like a decent NBA talking head at this point.
Think about it. Nick Wright and Shannon and Skip and Stephen A. and all these guys, they have a mantra from their producers, which is we need X amount of clips to go viral, right? Every show is chasing Twitter or internet virality because then it gets reshared or whatever and people want to tune it, right? That's the goal. So how am I going to go viral? Well, I got to say some outlandish shit, right? Because me sitting here and saying, well, like, no, nuance doesn't go viral. Like Stephen A. screaming, Trae Young is the worst player in the hit, right? That's going to go viral because people are like, what? Because what is he tapping into? Emotion, right? Think about when you started watching as a fan. It's the way hoops made you feel and your favorite player made you feel, the emotion part. So they go right for the emotion. Nick Young knows exactly who he's talking to when he speaks, right? He is speaking to people who hate that LeBron James gets the coverage that he gets and is praised as the GOAT. So Nick is like, this is going to make them mad. I'm going to hammer that point till the cow comes home that he's so great. And that gets the fan fired up and emotional, and it gets the tweet to go viral. It's a formula that works every time. My thing to people is always like, the game is right in front of you. They are telling you what they're doing. Just don't fall for it. Like, I don't watch that shit, so why do you have to watch it? Like, but if you want to, just know the game they're pulling on you. That's all.
Oh yeah, for sure. I just wish there was a way that they could be more narratively objective while combining that, so you can learn something and then take in that fanfare for everyone. Because at least then you learn more. Kind of like when the Nickelodeon did, that. I mean, obviously, as you said, the pace of the game, but I think appearing to more audiences so that people can learn the sport. Maybe they grow their audience by being. Maybe they have a different show segment where it's not just talking, where it's not just trash news type network and be like, but I have no clue how they can do that because right now they're living and dying by that clickbait and it's just disgusting. And those people deserve pay cuts because there's real people putting in that work. And that's for my guy, Brian Fonseca, who's just like, that's his mentality. You can get your clickbait, but objectively, you got to put some real heart and soul. You can put your whole heart and soul. Like you can do those narrative stuff, but show who you are as a person, not just who people want you to think you are, just to get the clicks and all that crap.
The closest show that does that, I think, to your mention you mentioned is Inside, right? The NBA. Like everyone knows. Like I don't. If the game's on TNT, I am not watching Inside because I know I'm going to get some serious basketball analysis. I'm going to laugh because Chuck and Shaq are getting into a fight about something stupid, and I can't wait to laugh my ass off. Or for when Kenny to fall asleep and let Ernie beat him when he runs to the board, right? It's TV show. That's funny. So I can appreciate humor and hilarious stuff. I want to look for that. And every once in a while when Kenny does his pictures, he will do something. Oh, Kenny, that's actually a good point. Not always. And I think, again, for the casual fan, I think that show probably does the best. People like us who want deep insight on ATOs and drop coverage versus whatever, like we know where we can go get that, right? That exists for us and we can find it when we want it, right? But I think for the casual, and I agree to your point, Doug, they can do a little bit more of that. It's harder during the live telecast though, right? Just because again, the pace of the game. But I think particularly when you're looking at the halftime shows and the pre-games, that's when they can mix in a little bit of the, okay, here's an actual basketball point, and the rest is just candy for it to get.
Yeah, I think they can tune up a little bit more, and that's why I like Ernie Johnson is really good at keeping things objective and pulling them back together, even in having fun. I mean, that's also why I love, when they brought on Candace Parker and D Wade, like they do quite a good job.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, I look forward to more where they bring in people who are more tuned into today's game. No offense to Chuck, Shaq, Kenny, they're fun, they're great. Sometimes they can actually be objective. Other times
They're
they try
back
to
in my
make
day.
other times they try to
Yeah.
make bird noises and eat donuts and have all those other fun things. But before we go too off, when did you like, because we talked about this a little bit early on in the pod, like when did you really have that sensation that you wanted to cover sports and kind of dive into it? Because we talked about it a little bit early on.
Yeah.
So like when did that kind of ingrain, but you weren't sure at the time?
I mean, I wanted in my high school, we had a cable TV station and I was the sports director. So it was then, right? I mean, so in theory, I should, and I don't like to use that word, but um, follow the path of, all right, go to Cuse, go to Ithaca, go wherever, follow the broadcast journalism path and do my thing, so that I've wanted to be involved in this since then, right? Since a teenager. But again, life just took me in a different direction and I saw different things. And the other part about that too is that it's important that you have people around you who support and believe in your dreams and your visions. And this is not, oh, my parents don't believe in my vision, so mom and dad don't get mad. But it's, when you are I'm a first generation American, right? My parents are immigrants from Trinidad. Like first generation American children of immigrant parents oftentimes have a very different idea of what they are allowed and capable of doing, because immigrant parents are like, we don't know what this entertainment stuff you want to get into is. No. That's not a career profession. You need to be a doctor. You need to be an engineer. You're right. These are the things that you need to be focused on. Don't waste your time with that silly crap, right? Because they just don't get it. Like it's just not something that they see as a viable option. And so that was a large part of it for me, right? It was like, no, you do well in this science stuff. Let's focus on that. And it's like, all right, I mean, it's fine and all, but sports is way more fun, right? Like, but it's also that belief in that idea of, but work isn't supposed to be fun, right? This is what you do for a job. This is how you pay your mortgage and your bills. But it can be. You can enjoy what you do about your career, right? And have it be fun. Is it fun 24/7? No. When we post things on the internet, on Instagram, we always post the finished product, right? You guys see the gloss, the things that you love. You don't see us up at 3 a.m. transcribing an interview or editing whatever, and we're like, damn it, the stupid audio level's not right, and like that, because no one wants to see that. That's boring. But we're doing it. Right? That's how it gets to be that fancy finished product you see at the end. So it's something I've always wanted to do, Doug. But again, that life change, going through the divorce, really crystallized it for me. I don't want to have regrets later in life being like, I never tried it. At least try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Totally agree. Because my mom's from Spain herself, and when she came over here, when I was telling her, when you're out of high school, like you were talking about, right? She's like, okay, map it out. What would you want to do? Obviously, my dad, he doesn't have that background. He grew up in New Jersey, same house, same everything. So with that mix, I could relate to that because on her side of the family, it was very traditional. Go to the doctor, go to the real estate, go to the lawyer, go whatever, the traditional way. So I could totally relate with you on that. I just wanted to share that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But, okay, so let's move into some NBA a little bit. So when you look into the first round and the second round of the playoffs that concluded, obviously, what surprised you the most? Like, what really stuck out to you?
Oh man, injuries, right? Like God, like it and we're big on this, the work I do at TrueHoop. We're big on sports science. Shout out to our guy at P3, Marcus Elliott. Like we are big into performance science and understanding the science of performance and what is good for optimal performance. I've been working on a variety of things this year, Chris, and I talked to so many people in sports science, trainers, performance staffs, all that. And to a man and woman, they all tell me unprompted when I ask them, how many efforts should an NBA player give in a 7-day span? To a man and woman, they all say 2. And efforts meaning games, right? 2. Well, we know they play way more than 2 games in 7 days, right? Like, and the body's just not getting enough time to rest and recover. And this is why you're seeing this high occurrence of soft tissue injuries, right? The hamstrings. It's just because it's just wear and tear, and these guys need a break, like, and they're just not getting it. And so the injuries to me really stood out early of changing teams' fates, right? I mean, you saw Anthony Davis limping out there in round 1. I was like, what is that guy doing? I was like, bro, just sit down. Like, and he had to sit himself down. He couldn't even move. I was like, what? You're hurting your team actually by being out here, right? Like, just sit down. Like, yeah, you're gonna lose, but much better to lose now, get yourself healthy, come back, But it's hard for these guys, and I understand. Like, this is who they define themselves as. Like, they're hoopers. They're ballers. Like, this is what I do. And there's also that part of sports culture, right? Which is you got to tough it out. And I'm like, yo, you don't got to be stupid, though. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, tough it out. I get it, but don't be dumb. And so, the injury stood out to me. The other thing that stood out, like, man, just the improvement of guys like Donovan Mitchell, like his pull up off the dribble three game. Holy hell! Like, I mean, because I was like, he wasn't that good. Like, dude thinks he's Steph Curry now. I'm like, oh my god, you're killing it on the pull up three. So there's the individual improvement and skill development in these guys, man. Like, I am amazed by that. Those are things that stood out to me in round one. And the effects too of the bubble from last year, right? We saw it. Teams that played late into the bubble last year were just gassed in the first round and second round. Like, they just had nothing. I mean, look, the Nuggets did their thing, right? Got out of their first round, got smoked in round two. They had nothing. Now, granted, they had injuries too, but Jokic had nothing. I mean, and Jokic played all season. He didn't miss any games. Like that, it has a cumulative effect. You're gonna feel it at some point. And so, that's what I took away early. What were those things?
And then just an interesting question popped in my mind. What is your opinion on? Obviously, for casual fans, it's going to be a no. But for people that are advanced, it's going to be a yes. So I wanted to get your opinion on this. When you see these Final Four teams in the league, and none of them have won a title since 2000, really, dating back to that, do you think that's good for the league, or do you think that's bad for the league?
Oh, it's great for the league. Look, we as a league, there's only two people that move the needle in this league, despite the fact that there are great players everywhere. LeBron and Steph are the only people that move the needle. You look at any site's metrics in terms of articles, down whatever clicks, if it don't got LeBron and Steph in it, there is a huge drop off. It's because those are the people that everybody knows, right? Like, LeBron's been in our consciousness since he was 14 or 15 years old. Cover of Sports Illustrated, all the things. Steph Curry, the baby-faced assassin, blah, 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 all that, right? Like, the Warriors consistently being in the finals. Again, where you get your influx of casual watching. These are the actors in the TV show that we know, right? We don't, casuals don't, who's Trey? I never heard of this guy. Like, and that's the challenge the NBA has when you have these kind of transcendent people. I mean, think about that, right? I mentioned two people. Like, Kevin Durant doesn't move the needle like that. And you're like, how is that possible? Right? Like, he may be the best player in the league. How does he not move the needle? Just doesn't, man. Those are the actors that people know. And so I think it's good that the NBA has this. And Trey's perfect, man. Like, Trey, like, you can cast him however you want, right? Like, he can be cast as a villain role because he loves it. Like, he'll go into whoever's city and, like, be the new Reggie Miller. But also, he's going to work for the NBA because he looks relatable. And what I mean relatable is he's small in a land of giants, right? Like, he's a Lilliputian amongst, like, these freaking humongous people. But he's really not an everyman. He's really athletic, actually, for his size. Like, he's got super great hand-eye coordination, all that. But that makes him relatable. Kids are going to love him. So I think the NBA's got a real gold mine here with Trae Young coming up. And if they make the finals, that's huge. And if you can get him opposite Devin Booker, oh, my God. Come on. NBA, that's gold for you. Just sell that. One of the things we had when we were younger, anytime, and look, we had less options, right? There wasn't Amazon streaming, all this crap. But you felt the importance of a game. I remember whenever I turned on NBA on NBC or whatever, either Marv or Bob are doing the intro, and they're like, yo, this makes it seem like it's life or death. Like, this is, right? Like, what do we got now? We got Drake and DJ Khaled coming in and out of games, which, don't get me wrong, cool. I fuck with Drake and DJ Khaled. Good music, but you're not telling me why I should care about this game. Again, if I'm a casual. Like, we already care, but if I'm a casual fan, what does that have to do with I'm confused. How are you selling me on the importance of this game? And they got to be better at that.
Then one thing I also wanted to pick your brain on, I was born 98, so obviously this generation of basketball, it's not a complete flip yet, right? The poster boys haven't left yet. They haven't retired yet. Obviously, there's a few. But when you see this coming generation of Trey, Doncic, the poster boys of this generation, Donovan Mitchell, you see these guys, compared to other generation kind of flips, how would you kind of characterize this one as you foresee it?
So it's a great question, Chris. Like, now it's so much about skill more than it has ever been in this league, right? And that's what I see. I see the skills revolution. Look, you used to have guys in this league who were just big and big bodies who would like throw it around and rebound, and your true old school power forwards who were there to like mete out punishment and right, like that was their job. Those guys get played off the floor in today's game because they can't guard in space. and they can't shoot threes, right? So what happens? I'm playing 5-on-4, right, on offense, and then I'm playing the other way on defense. Like if I can ignore you defensively, that is wonderful for me, right? And I'm worried about these other guys. And so that's the biggest thing I think we're seeing right now. There's something I'm working on for TrueHoop right now, where it's just like there is a search and destroy method that players and coaches have, particularly in the postseason, where it's just like, ooh, there's the weakness, and I'm going to attack it until you decide to do something different, right? Like we saw it with Book in game one, that drop coverage that I mentioned earlier. They were back in the drop coverage, not towards the front, and Zub was not like in a good guarding position. Once Book realized that, 16 straight points in the mid range? I mean, like, we're going to kill you until you decide to do something different. I'm going to attack every time. And I think that is what you see now more so than you saw in previous generations. You still attack weaknesses, but you attack them differently. And now with all these skilled guys coming out, and it's just incredible. Like if you don't have the ability to pass, dribble, shoot, and know where you belong on defense, like I can't play you, because now as a coach, I have to scheme for my own player and be like, okay, they're going to attack him here. So you're taking time thinking about that when I should be thinking, how can we optimize ourselves and weaponize ourselves to best put pressure on the opponent?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then, so those are all great points, by the way, first off. So when you just talked about the detail and skill, right? So what was your kind of reaction when you saw these ATO plays that are going on, and you see Budenholzer not adjusting that well, and you kind of just see all these little points? Like, when it comes to details in the playoffs, do you think that's really a big emphasis point in now today's NBA? It's mostly, hey, you even see casual fans nowadays say it.
Yeah.
Why did you make this adjustment? Why did you do this? You didn't really see that back in the day.
No.
So what's your take on that?
That's the advantage of like the advent of TiVo and these things, right? Where you can freeze the TV and like do different things. I remember last year's playoffs, I was looking at something on Synergy, and I was like, it was the Doncic shot he hit against the Clippers in round 1, I believe they played them. This was last year, not this year. And I was like on Synergy being like, everybody was killing the defender, and I was like, I don't think that was it. So of course on Synergy, the advantage you have is you can watch it on quarter speed, 1/8 speed, whatever. And I'm like, I'm like, the defender was in the perfect spot. He needed to be 4 inches taller with a longer wingspan. Well, you can't grow, so this is just what it is, right? Like, and so I think that's sort of the idea. And even with TiVo, you can be an amateur person with that, right? Where you can pause your TV and be like, well, wait a minute, why didn't they do X, Y, and Z? So you definitely see that, and that's been a talking point for a lot of people. For me, I think there have always been adjustments in the postseason, even back to the 70s, 80s, whatever. Oh, yeah. It gets magnified now, though, right? Because of the way in which the game is covered, the different camera angles, and what gets talked about on platforms like Twitter and what have you, right? Where it's like, oh my God, Bud does whatever. And for Bud, Bud's the whipping boy of the playoffs, right? Like until he wins, this is what's going to happen to him. And which, look, the win of the NBA championship is hard. It's a 1 in 30 lottery. Like that's a lot of things have to break right for you to do that. Now, for Bud, he seems to be very much of the camp. Yeah, but what I do works for us. Look how many wins I've piled up doing it this way, right? It's same thing with a player. It's very hard to tell a player who has just scored 12 straight points in isolation, yeah, that's not a good play. Well, what do you mean? I just scored 12 straight points doing that. Like, look at my career. I have so much success doing it this one way. It's very hard for you to be like, okay, but in this scenario, my guy, you might want to do something different, right? Because it's going to keep them guessing, blah, 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 all the different things we know that make it easy. But yeah, it's tough for someone like Bud, right? Because he's been successful. You can't say, yeah, he hasn't won a championship, but I hate using that as a metric to define success. Again, it's a lottery. It's a 1 in 30 chance. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. But piling up the amount of regular season wins, doing something one way, it makes it hard for you to want to adjust. But does he need to do things quicker? Yes. And hopefully we'll see him try to do that, at least in this Atlanta series, or else trouble for him.
Yeah, most definitely. And then when you now, this is a question that's been a major conversation point across the whole league, dating back to regular season, but obviously got a bunch of gas poured into the playoffs, right? 10-second rule with Giannis. So do you believe the league should be enforcing that, or do you think that they should, or what do you think is your overall ideology behind that?
It's so interesting. Like, my thing for the referees is I just want you to decide what rules matter and what rules don't matter. And if they don't matter, then why are they there? Then just take them out, right? Like, don't keep this continuous ambiguity. I talked about, right, ambiguity and how human beings, we don't like that's because if we don't know if you're calling it now, to be fair also to Giannis, like the counts in Brooklyn were super fast, right? It's like, all right, guys, like you count Mississippi in between. You don't just go 1, 2, 3. Like, come on, like chill out with that. But, he does take an abnormally long time at the free throw line. And yeah, you can see players getting angry about it because they are like, yo, if I do the same thing, are you going to call it on me or you're not going to call it, right? Like, I think that is sort of the idea there. Look, should they enforce it? Yeah, but if they did, Giannis would literally get violated every single time. And so the NBA is also in the business where they can't embarrass a two-time MVP like that either, right? So it's a very tricky thing. So you'll see every once in a while they'll call it to be like, all right, bro, like chill. You got to speed this up, but they can't do it to him every single time. And that's the challenge. It's also part of the replay issue, right? Like, with again TiVo and freeze frame and whatever, the reason we have that now in the replay is because we can't have the refs looking stupid. Like if I can pause my TV and go, nope, clearly out on this person's foot, the ref can't get it wrong. So they have to now have this whole process in play. And for me, I think, look, let us into Secaucus because that's where the actual decision gets made. The refs on the court aren't doing anything. The guy in Secaucus is like, yep, out or in or whatever. He's the one or she is the one saying it. So just show us what you're looking at in Secaucus so we know too. All right, cool. No problem. Move on.
Exactly. And before Doug asks you about your championship pick, who's coming out of each conference, all those type of stuff, I wanted to ask you too about NBA futures for certain players, right? Because in today's NBA, it's a big super team era. We've seen it. It's everywhere. It's written everywhere. And obviously that's not a big generation thing for people in the past generation or generation before that. If you're a star, you should be able to lead your own player. But in today's NBA, it's trickled down, it's sprinkled on some casual fans and some advanced fans as well. So what do you think about the future of KD and the Nets and then the Sixers with Ben Simmons? Those are my two examples I want to ask you about and get your opinions on.
No problem. But first there, Chris, super teams have existed since the beginning of the NBA.
Exactly.
They've just been constructed differently, right? Like, the Celtics were all those
good
teams. The Lakers, they had a billion Hall of Famers. The super teams exist for a reason and forever. We like dynasties in this league. That's how it works. You win when you have the best players, period. The only thing that's different now is instead of GMs creating it, players are creating it. All right, who cares? Doesn't matter. That's a whole other conversation for a different day. Now, as far as the Nets, they're very top heavy, right? Of course, with KD, Harden, and Kyrie. That limits them with what they can do with the rest of that roster. We don't know how much Joe Tsai, chairman of Alibaba, wants to pay luxury tax. If he's like, I don't care, let's do whatever, cool, let's roll. If he's like, I'm capping luxury tax at like, I don't know, 75 million. Okay, well, because I think they're already 53 million right now into it. I think they have to pay. So that limits you with what you can do. But you see, no one on earth believes a fully Nets team is not still playing basketball right now, right? I mean, look at them. With Kevin Durant and a one-legged James Harden, you took the Bucks to 7. So, right, like we know what this team can do. Their challenge, of course, is father time and age, right? Like Durant's going to be 32, coming off an Olympics, which is maddening to me that he's playing in the Olympics.
Yep.
James Harden, Kyrie Irving, these aren't 25-year-olds. They got miles in their bodies. So keeping those guys healthy, that is what my number one concern if I was a Net fan would be. Is like, look, we can say what we need to say. Like Sean and the performance staff does not want Kevin playing the Olympics, but they can't tell him no, right? Like it's
an independent decision.
Right. He's just going to do what he's going to do. And so, but if they had it their way, none of these dudes are playing in the Olympics. Luckily for them, Harden did pull out. He said he's not going to play, and Kyrie's not playing. So at least those two guys will get a chance to rest over the summer. But honestly, for the Nets squad, I think, if those three guys are healthy, you have the core nucleus of what you need to win a title, right? Like they're good enough. They showed they can coexist. They can share the ball. These guys are three extremely high IQ basketball guys. Like it's not just like they're great individual isolation talent. Sure, they are, of course, but they know how to move and share the rock and make the right play, right? The question is really the pieces around them that you fill in, right? Because they obviously have some rebounding issues. They have, sometimes shooting issues, right? Like in terms of enough spacing around them on the floor. Look at a guy like Nick Claxton. I think his summer development is going to be so big for them, him and Bruce Brown. Because if Brown can start developing a reasonable corner 3 jump shot, well, now we got space everywhere. I can roll to the rim, I can flare out, and now you're in trouble because now if you go help off one of those 3, you're cooked, right?
Yep.
Same thing with Claxton. He's got to develop a little more refine his offensive game around the rim, right? Get you a little jump hook, something, and then eventually work him out so he can space the floor as well, right? But if they do those kinds of things, I think they're in fine shape. It's really going to be at the margins, right? We know what we got with our steak and potatoes, so to speak. What's going to be the rest of that filler on that plate? Is Blake going to come back at a minimum? Is Jeff going to come back? Is right? And then again, if Blake and Jeff come back, they're not spring chickens either, right?
Yeah.
Like investing a lot of your money into older players while you trust them is good. And look, you're always one injury away, but as you're older, that chance of injury increases because of all the wear and tear you have. Would it be better to, again, invest in Reggie Perry, Nick Claxton, Brown, and your younger guys and getting them to be capable so that KD, Harden, and Kyrie trust them in big playoff moments? That's a big gap, right? And that's on Steve and Sean and Kevin and James and Kyrie to, be willing to buy into that. If that happens, I think they're in good shape. Philly, God. I mean, look, I've been a proponent of this forever. When you have two all-NBA and all-NBA defensive guys who are 26 and younger, you can't break that up. Those kinds of guys don't grow on trees. Like, that's the thing about basketball. The Embiid, those are the rare commodities. Those are the things that are hard to get. But Philly's incubation system clearly is not the right environment for Ben Simmons.
Yep.
And, coaching and reaching players is not just about the one guy. There's 15 guys on a roster. Can you reach all of them? For whatever reason, the environment in Philly is not conducive to get Ben to do what he needs because he is excellent at so many things, but it is very obvious that there's a one glaring hole in his game that causes consternation and problems, right? When you're trying to win the most highest leverage situations. And for him, of course, it's embarrassment there, right? It's afraid of looking stupid when I shoot an air ball or whatever. But it's like somewhere along the line, that piece he was not told, it's okay, Ben. We still love you anyway if you do that. No problem. Like, right? It's not there. And it's taking away his aggressiveness. Because again, someone used Shaq as the example. Shaq's a career 50-something% free throw shooter? That's terrible. Shaq was never not aggressive when he had the ball in the post.
Yep.
Same thing with Ben. I don't care if you get fouled a million times. Because here's the thing. Even if you miss them all, you're giving your team value. How? You're putting fouls on the other team's front court. You can foul their whole team out. Guess what? That's a win for us, right? So, and for whatever reason, that's not working. So I think, Rich and Daryl and Doc are talking about their plan for Ben. Yeah, that's just smokescreen for, we're trying to move him. Now, the challenge, of course, is his value is at its lowest, and teams know that, right? So they know you want to dump him. So, okay, we'll take him, but we're going to rake you over the coals for that. Oh, Ben Simmons, sure. But I also want Matisse Thybulle, I want Tyrese Maxey, and I want a draft pick, right? And that's the position you're going to be in. Teams are going to really try to take advantage of you in those scenarios.
Completely agree.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, he's come a long way or fallen a long way from the summer league videos where he was shooting the mid-range and all those other things, and yet he doesn't have that skill set even like
just stopped.
Flared. Yeah. It's like it never even happened. I mean, we shouldn't look at someone's career based on summer league, but to think that he had that offensive caliber and just like never touched it. But then also there's the toxicity moment. Like Philly fans are really tough love fans. They boo their team.
Yeah.
You don't really see that in any other NBA team. So to think he has to deal that, and then Embiid kind of not so subtly throws him under the bus.
No, he did.
Post game interview.
He did.
It's not so subtly. It's just like, well, damn.
Plus, Ben's a young player. That plays a lot of part into it, right? He's a very young player. That plays a lot into it.
So I mean, people always rumored that those guys had some beef together, and to see that, I mean, maybe it would have been different. But to think that they were so close with the Jimmy Butler led team, it's just like, damn. That's all I got to say with that.
Our good friend Brian Fonseca will beat that point to death.
Oh, I know he loves it.
He loves
the closeted Heat fan over there.
All right, we get it, Brian. But like, it's Ben is talented and he has a place in this league, right? Like, again, you don't make all NBA and all NBA defense being a scrub. Like, he's incredible at everything else. But it's the little thing, right? It's the fear of the free throws, right? That's the thing that's causing the other part to be so big. And we need to get him in an environment where someone says, again, I don't care if you miss 10 million free throws in a row. Doesn't matter. I need you to keep doing that thing.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think his free throw shooting has declined every season, which I also do not understand.
Yeah, confidence.
Yeah,
Confidence.
it's weird. And are there any other teams you think that have like a big star potential movement coming up in the summer? Obviously, we don't
Yeah.
just need to look at the narratives of it all because everyone's like Dame's gonna finally leave and all that kind of jazz and
Well,
Donovan Mitchell maybe because they made it so far, but also didn't make it so far.
hmm well, it's funny. I mean, with the smoke, there's fire, right? Like, so the Dame CJ pairing in Portland, I think we've seen all we need to see with that, right? It doesn't work. Like, you cannot have two little guys, and little by NBA standards, as your main offensive creators who don't play any defense in the backcourt. You get killed, right? There's a tax for that. Doesn't work. So you got to split that up. And that's where the Philly piece comes interesting, right? Do you do a CJ for Ben Simmons? Because Ben Simmons with Damian Lillard, now we're talking, right? Because what does Portland not have? Defense. Well, Ben takes care of that, no problem, right? Like, and now you can do other things. He can be a great pick and roll partner, all that. But again, if I'm Neil O'Shea, oh no, Daryl, I'm not just taking Ben though. Like, I want Tybal, I want Maxey, right? You're asking for everything. So, and does Daryl want to do that? I think Atlanta has an interesting thing to decide what they do with John Collins. He's going to be a restricted free agent. Luckily, they have that advantage, but you got to keep him. And I don't care what the tax is. Atlanta's owners got plenty of money. They're all, if you follow the work that Henry does on TrueHoop, they're tied into like Apollo Global and all these like shady ass financial firms that do illegal arms deals and stuff. So they got plenty of money, right? So I don't care. Luxury tax, you got to keep that together because he's on the same timeline with Trey, Kevin Herter, Cam Reddish and DeAndre Hunter, right? Like Capella's your oldest kind of rotation starter. Like that's fine. Bring that back. The Utah Jazz one is interesting. I'm not reporting this, so aggregators stay away. But there's rumblings there about Donovan wanting a change of scenery. So stay tuned.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Stay
definitely not
tuned.
old news after last year where, he blames Rudy for spreading the virus. And also he has ties to the Mets through dad.
Sure, sure,
So that
sure.
New York's and he's would be an ideal missing piece for the Knicks. But I don't know how package
Plus,
would
he's
work
from
for
the
that.
area. That's
He's
a big
from the
thing.
area. That's
And
a big
then
Yeah.
the only other name I was just thinking of, it's not going to be Zion. I think, despite what his family thinks, I think they can wait out another year before trying to
Well,
go.
I mean, he's under contract right now. The
Yeah,
question
like
is, if you're
I don't see.
Zion, and we haven't seen this happen yet, a player hasn't done it yet. Is there going to be a player who refuses the rookie extension and says, "Screw it, I'm not signing this extension"? That
Mhm.
it's going to be hard, particularly someone like Zion who will likely make an. Did he make All NBA this year?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I
if
don't
he
think
makes
so.
All NBA next year, and then his extension is going to be what, 5 years, 200? That's a lot of money to turn down.
Mhm.
He's got his Jordan brand money, but it ain't 200 million
Not
money,
200 million.
right?
Yeah,
So, but if someone's willing to turn down the rookie extension, oh, now all bets are in play. Now it's
yeah.
like the whole league might go nuts.
And the
So,
last player who also changes scenery that I'm thinking of right now, because I don't think Zach's planning on leaving Chicago based on how they kind of changed it around a little bit, but I could be completely wrong. They could screw up this summer and be like, yeah, I'm forcing my way out next season. But the other guy I'm thinking of is Lonzo Ball, who's proved
mm,
himself as a decent backcourt guy on the defensive end, who's increased his offense
he,
production.
he he's
So
a free agent this summer. So
He's a free agent.
Lonzo's going to be having a lot of suitors, and
was
honestly,
he free agent or restricted?
I
I
want
thought
to
he
He's
was
say
on.
he's
restricted.
I think he's
yes.
unrestricted.
I
I
think
think.
he's
Oh,
unrestricted. I think
oh,
he is. I think he's
Yeah.
unrestricted.
Yeah, he's
Either way, he. Oh my God! I mean, you can think about how many teams. You look at
Oh, there's gonna be
contenders, and like he can shoot the three, right? He can guard, and the ball doesn't stick. And it's right. He's not a ball stopper. He's gonna get that thing going, and he can play, make, and create. I'm telling you, man, he's gonna be valuable. A lot of teams are gonna be going after him this
Mhm.
summer.
yeah,
Totally
no,
Stay
agree.
tuned for
definitely.
that
I
for
thought he was a
sure.
perfect fit for the Bulls. I still think he's a perfect fit for the Knicks, and it's not even just because the big markets. I just think he's like a
He'd be a
missing
perfect
piece
fit
in
on the
that
Nets. They don't have
regard.
any money. He works good on the Nets. They have no
Well,
money to come, but like,
so I guess for the because now we brought up the Nets again. So sign and trade Dinwiddie. Obviously, you mentioned his home as Christian Winfield reported before Shams and company. So like, and it's also logic because he loves his home, but also wants the bag too. So like, where would you see some ideal sign and trades for him? And then we'll jump back into the playoffs for the final
no
run of it
problem.
all.
Uh, the LA teams, of course, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's the one that you see. But again, it's going to be challenging to work out. I mean, both teams are cap stressed, right? So who are you taking back in return? That's like any. I mean, if I'm the Nets and it's the Lakers, I don't know, Taylor Horton Tucker, I guess. I don't even like. I'm looking at that roster. I don't even know what's on there that is like Kyle Kuzma,
It's a lot of veterans,
right? Like it's just
Kuzma to me would be a rental on a pick, if anything.
yeah. There's nothing there. And then the Clippers, same thing. What am I taking back? Luke Kennard already got Landry Shamet. Like
Morris, even though the front court's starting to get a little packed.
I don't know if I love the Morrises here. Like it's just, I think it's tough. It's going to be Spencer's market's going to be interesting. It really is because I think he probably wants to be a starter somewhere. You know, man, it's tough. I mean, could he? Listen,
I like Denver.
Denver would be nice.
I like
then
Denver.
You figure
Will Barton.
You could put him and Murray in the backcourt together. Like that's not bad. Dinwiddie would work well with the Knicks.
Yeah,
Knicks need a point guard. Like I mean, could you imagine that for the rivalry purposes? Holy hell!
Especially because he was trolling them all this time in Brooklyn.
Yeah,
so
that'd be
hilarious.
wild. That'd be wild, man. Like it's interesting. Yeah, it's tough, but Spencer has a market. Denver's a good one, Chris. These rebuilding teams are like, he's not going to want to be in like that kind of like, you want to go somewhere where it's like, all right, playoffs, we see that like in our immediate future, like let's do it and see what we can do there. So interesting, time will tell.
Yeah, he's definitely not going back to the Pistons to save them after he threw them to the side with the Bulls.
Pistons, I love it.
But yeah, so thoughts on these recent conference final games and who do you have coming out? And then we'll rank your choices based on narrative or just straight up facts. Who you want to win the chip? Well, I guess that's not straight up facts, but who do you want to win the chip? And then, go from there.
I would love it if the Phoenix Suns won. Selfishly, because I told everybody 2 months ago when I did a video on them, plus 1,200, and they have all the elements you need, right? A defensive rim running big man, 3-and-D on the wings, and elite shot creation and shot making from your backcourt. Like that's a recipe for a title team, and they got it all. Right? Like they have those pieces. So I would love it if the Suns won. I mean, now their odds are like plus 110. I was like, man, you listened to me 2 months ago, people. You put that bet in plus 12. You're looking mighty fine right about now. So Phoenix for sure. I'd love to come out of the West and win it. And I'd love to see Atlanta, man. I just think Trae Young on that big stage again. For the casual basketball fan, I think this would be great. Of course, the markets have the NBA nervous about, oh, no one's going to turn on the TV. But if y'all package it right and sell it, tell everyone why they need to watch it. Like, I think that would be wonderful. I love what I'm seeing. I think, look, but to be fair, the Clippers aren't going to go away quietly. Going down 3-1 or going up 3-1 to the Nuggets last year and then losing, that did something for them, right? Steve Nash talked about this all year, Chris, about shared experiences and going through adversity. The Clippers have done that as an organization, right? Like last year, that's going to galvanize them. Going down 2-0 twice this year already and coming back, that's galvanized them. They're down 2-1 now, right? So they found something together. Now, not having Kawhi is going to hurt them, right? Because that's a big chess piece that you don't have to play. But they can easily win game 4 at home, and this could be 2-2 going back to Phoenix, right? So I wouldn't be. I said Suns in 6, and I could still see the Clippers winning another game. Out east, again, look, the Hawks are playing with house money. If they're not scared of anything because they got Trae, right? And
Trae's been stunting on them
all with confidence, and he's been stunting, shimmying before shots. It's the Bucks. Now, the Bucks too have a lot of collective shared experience, right? Like, so they have another gear they can get to. But this is what we talked about with Bud. Bud's got to make some adjustments, man. And why are you waiting till Trae Young is not just some run-of-the-mill point guard, right? Like, get out here and stay attached to his body. Like, do the things you know you need to do. Get out of that drop coverage. Like, yes, I know you've won doing that, but this is different. You're trying to get to the NBA Finals now, my friend. Do whatever you have to do to win games. And if they do that, the Bucks are the better team on paper and should be able to win. But if Bud's going to keep doing his Bud stuff, listen, man, Trae's going to be ready, man. Like, and he'll have a game where he'll hit, instead of 4 of 14 from 3, he'll hit 7 of 14 from 3, and then you're cooked. You know what I mean? So Yeah,
Trey
I'm
had one
loving
of
it.
his worst games in the playoffs and still beat the Sixers. So it's
Still
kind of
won
crazy.
Game 7
And the
on the
Bucks are
road.
still high on beating the broken down Nets and treating it like the fully healthy Nets. So they need to get that mindset, make those adjustments. So I guess obviously, are you still picking the Suns as like your go-to? You want to win it all?
Yeah, I think it should be nice to see CP3 because as I started the
That's the
show,
thing.
I'm not a if you win a ring that changes your legacy thing because it's hard to win in this league. Like too many great players have never won titles, and it's not because they suck. They're born in the wrong era, and there's too many other good teams to beat. Like that's been CP3's problem. He's of LeBron's generation. Yo, man, hard to win titles when that dude's like here. It just is. So I would love for him to get there and just win his title. Just for other people, it'll be like, now he's somehow a winner all of a sudden. And it's like, okay, sure, I guess.
Yeah. So then you pick the Hawks with their narrative with, all the surprise season. Like they went from not making the playoffs to making the playoffs. And then I guess would you go Clippers Bucks? Like who are you going next for narrative purpose? Because obviously the Bucks are the only team left that have won a ring, but also for Giannis, a small market team to be able to like they got him to sign the contract. If he fails here, does he get to the mindset where if we don't win this year, do I get
Right.
back to the mindset of force my way out or something
Yeah. I think for
outrageous?
me, narrative wise, I like the Clippers as the next narrative story just because it's a franchise, right? The cursed Clippers. This is their first Western Conference Finals as a
I was about
franchise.
to say.
That's insane. But again, it tells you, well, first of all, they've been running competently for a million years, so that doesn't hurt. But it's hard to win in this league, right? Like think about it. Of the 70, however many championships, like four teams have like 70% of them. It's
Hmm.
hard to win in this league, man. Like I tell people all the time, we should celebrate the Final Four more. These four teams need to be celebrated. It is hard to get to a conference finals. Most players will never play in a conference finals in their life. As great as Chris Paul is, this is only his second conference finals.
So
Second.
before I let you go, what do you take for each of these teams to make it out to get to that final stage and win it all?
Milwaukee, it's about doing the things necessary that you know will be at a disadvantage for the Hawks. They have no answer for Giannis in the paint. Giannis should be living in the paint. Literally,
He should
I
be
don't
playing the
ever want to
five
see you
more.
take any jump shots at all, ever. Kill them down low. Like,
You
yes, you
mean
should be
no
playing
fadeaways
Giannis
on
at the
Trey?
five. You're right. A fadeaway on Trey. What? Trey Young's 6'1". What are you doing? Like none of that. So if the Bucks do what they're supposed to do, right, which is play our best lineup, Giannis at the five, right, like just unleash it now. That's what's going to help for them. I think for Atlanta, it's play loose and as free as you've been playing. The pressure's all on Milwaukee. Like they're the ones that are
Exactly.
supposed to win. You guys have been on house money since the first round against the Knicks. So I mean, it's gravy now. Y'all just do your thing. For Phoenix, I think it's really about getting Paul back, sort of like reintegrated, just because missing 11 days is gonna make you rusty, and just running the stuff that you run. Phoenix has, I think, the best offense left in the playoffs. I just love the way that ball moves. I love getting the shots open in the corners to Johnson, Bridges, Crowder. I love that campaign off the bench. Like Phoenix, and then Booker just being Devin Booker. Like I think Phoenix just needs to do what they do, and they'll be fine. I think for
Yeah,
the
hopefully
Clippers,
campaign's ankle isn't too bad
yeah,
though.
yeah,
That really sucked
that
last
hurt them.
night.
That hurt them. That hurt them for sure, though, because you got to play Etuan more minutes, which is like
Mm.
that's not great. And then for the Clippers, Ty Lue has been masterful this
Oh
postseason.
yeah.
Just keep pushing the right buttons, my man. Like your Kawhi is likely not coming back, so you know what you're left with. Listen, that means you got to play Terrence Mann and Reggie Jackson. Hey, Jamarcus and Rondo, y'all are getting like literally a minute or two here and there to get those guys a blow. That's what we're doing. But we're rolling with the best guys we have available and keep instilling that confidence in Zubac because Zubac played so well last night. You can keep that rolling and they could sort of even out that matchup with Aiton. You have a chance.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. So thank you again for joining us, Rob. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Talk to Chris and I. We're so glad there isn't a mic you don't like talking to. So thank you so much. And just let everyone know where to find you, where to find your work, where to find you on social media if you want to be followed and, just push out the good vibes.
Appreciate it, man. And thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. As I said, love you guys' work and thank you for giving me some time. So you can find my work on TrueHoop.com. You can find me on the Picks and Prop Network. You can find me on the Seven Footers Basketball Podcast and my Sneaker and Culture Podcast, The Kicks and Shit Show. I am on all social media platforms at JS Hector. And that's it, man.
And all that stuff will be in the description below in this episode. But guys, remember to send over any suggestions, questions, comments, or thoughts on any of our content by sending an email to wingspanpodcast@gmail.com. And do not forget to follow us on our social media accounts. But most importantly, make sure you subscribe to our podcast on your preferred listening service. And as for next time, stay classy, take care, and please get vaccinated, people.
Love it.